for the session. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the How to Go SOC-less Without Slipping Up webinar, presented by our community supporters, ADVA, Juniper, and Cisco, and our Merit Educational Series sponsors, Informatica and Blumira, that's here today. With the growing number of cybersecurity threats and the explosion of devices and data that need protection, how do organizations without dedicated cybersecurity staff make sure that not only is everything properly defended, that their teams also have the ability to properly see and respond when attackers start jiggling the doorknobs and enacting their attack campaign? Municipalities and education communities can be made ready. In this webinar, Blumira and Merit share on-the-ground experiences about how they're able to achieve deep visibility of potential security issues. Institutions can learn how to properly instrument their IT infrastructure through actionable security playbooks, contextual automated alerts, and access to security advisors, all without having a security operations center at the ready, 24/7. I'm Ryan Fuller, the marketing team lead for Merit Network. Joining me today will be Patrick Garrity, Vice President of Operations at Blumira, and Kevin Hayes, Chief Information Security Officer from Merit Network. Patrick has years of experience in the security industry, building and scaling usable security products. He currently leads Blumira's product, sales, and marketing teams. Prior to joining Blumira, he led sales engineering, product marketing, and international expansion for Duo Security. Kevin Hayes is the Chief Information Security Officer at Merit Networks. In his role, Kevin is responsible for the management of IT security protocols, controls, and products, responding to information security incidents, big and small, and providing security policy and strategy guidance to Merit members, system administrators, and management. No stranger to the nonprofit world, Kevin has previously worked at Wayne State University, creating and directing a team of cyber professionals dedicated to keeping organizations secure. Kevin holds both CISSP and CISM certifications, is a member of Governor's Cyber Civilian Corps, and has been heard talking about security issues from time to time on Detroit TV and radio stations. This webinar will last approximately 60 minutes. We'll include a question and answer session at the end. You may submit a question at any time by clicking the chat icon in the row of options at the bottom of your screen. The session is being recorded, and a link will be sent to our attendees within the next few days. With that, I will pass it to Patrick to get things started.
Great. Awesome to have myself and Kevin on. Appreciate the intros. You can go to the next slide as we hop in to talk a little bit about going SOC-less. And you can go to the next one. Pretty pictures of us. I think we should have brought this up earlier. But yeah, just to kick it off, right? Like, so I think one of the big observations is there's a lot of when you talk about security operations or a SOC or a center, there's a lot of different tools out there and a lot of different terminology. And so, you know, Kevin, you yourself had the experience of both building what you'd consider to be a security operations center and leveraging different tool sets. And so I think first off, just want to hear your take on what some of these different terms mean and how they relate to building a security practice.
Yeah, thanks. Like these are the wonderful security acronyms, and there's a lot more than even just these, and they really get thrown around a whole lot with regards to EDR, SIM, or SIEM, depending on how you feel like pronouncing it, and SOC. And if you're not, if you're getting inundated with this, you might not really understand. Okay, what do all these things actually do? What do they all actually mean? How they actually all come together? So, we'll be talking a little bit about like these concepts, but just to get this out of the way, number one, EDR, at the end of the day, endpoint detection and response software. Consider it a very, very fancy antivirus or anti-malware software. This is typically a program that you install on each of your computers or servers within your organization. And the whole point behind having basically this antivirus on steroids is that it can perform really extensive, what I call instrumentation on that computer, so that in the event of a security breach or a compromise, you can actually, it's almost like going back in time, and you can generate a timeline of all of the different network connections that have happened, all the different programs and processes that have launched, all the different DNS names that have been resolved. Basically, it's a gigantic magnifying glass that can look back in time and see what has actually happened on an individual host. And this is really, really great when there's zero-day vulnerabilities or brand new viruses or malware that weren't detected when they first tried to launch, so that we can go back and see exactly, well, what did it do? How was it successful with what it tried, so that we can properly scope out what exactly happened during a cybersecurity incident. So when you hear EDR, that's what it is. It is software running on your endpoints. They pretty much all report up to a cloud-based platform, so you can go to a website and look at all really, really nicely and easily. The second acronym de jour is SIM or SIEM, again, depending on how you feel like pronouncing it. Security Incident and Event Management Software. Now, what this software does is this is typically installed in a central location, and all of your endpoints, whether it's your switches, your routers, your access points, even potentially your like laptops and servers and workstations, basically everything within your organization generates logs and information. And that includes back from our previous example of your EDR software. But everything generates logs and information, and the SIM system is basically designed to be not only the gigantic landfill that all this data and information is supposed to go to, but also act as the Sherlock and the Watson that are looking at all this data and information and is trying to correlate events, to normalize data, normalize information, and really look for the needle in the haystack. Because during a cybersecurity incident, and specifically successful ones, you will be getting different logs and data and information from throughout your entire organization that kind of showcase that something bad is happening. And properly designed SIM software can go and identify all those events kind of as they're happening, group them all together, and then hopefully show you one happy little alert that says, this is something that you need to look at. We see these events, we're going to escalate it up into an alert, and you need to go and do something about this. And then SIM software and EDR software feed into this concept of a SOC, a security operations center. This is an organizational thing, an organizational construct that if you have the proper tools and the proper staffing, the proper working location, the proper processes, the proper like organizational callouts and escalation procedures, can allow you to monitor your organization for bad security things. A really formal term, I know, but look for those kind of bad things on a very proactive basis, and hopefully, be able to detect threats and attackers as those attacks are happening, and not 180 days after the fact, as is unfortunately, sadly, the norm right now when it comes to security vulnerabilities and breaches. Go on.
Yeah, and I think as we're talking about the SOC side of things, sorry, you're good. Next slide. I think one of the things is in these different tool sets, and considering you have some experiences on the SOC front, right, of building out different teams through different organizations you worked at, and just curious, like, first off, like, can you break down what that looks like for an organization, some of the resources associated with that, and how that might be a challenge or a limitation to a lot of organizations too.
Absolutely. So yeah, and I love the slide here, because usually when people say, hey, like I'm interested in a SOC, right? Like I love the idea that we have tools, we have technology, we have people, like we have all these things that together we can make sure that we don't get hacked, right? And this concept of a security operations center, where you have like skilled IT people and analysts that are, they're looking at 5 monitors all at one time. Like, here's an example of a SOC from DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And of course, you have to have like the big fancy boards up front that like look really, really great whenever any VIPs or people come through, right? There are SOCs and examples like this at really, really big organizations all across the world. And of course, this is always the thing that we want to like aspire to be. Can we all realistically do this? No, but like everybody loves Raymond, everybody loves a SOC, right? Like, this is ideally what we would want to see. But we have to pare things back a little bit and come back into the realm of the possible, because we don't have billion-dollar budgets. We can't have something like this. But the concept of having people and processes and facilities in place to help this out. Well, it's like, well, what potentially could we do here? Let's take a look at the next slide. Then you start thinking about some of these things, and your point, Patrick, like what does it take to actually potentially like build a SOC in? Usually people think like, all right, well, maybe we're looking at things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What does it take to actually build all of that? It can't be that hard, can it? Some of your organizations may actually already have some 24/7 work happening, right? You may have either IT workers or computer operators that are looking at things 24 hours a day, whether they're making sure that like payroll jobs are completing, or that night processes to either balance the books or to perform backups or to do any other normal procedures. It's all it could all be happening either 24/7 or even just on multiple shifts. So if you're thinking, okay, I'm planning on doing this, I'm planning on adding in maybe some security monitoring, adding in some SOC roles, some SOC responsibilities, building out a SOC. How hard could this really be? Like they're already doing some things right now. What are the things that we need to think about? Next slide.
I think it's funny that you're talking about this, because I think a lot of times they're not doing much from a security perspective today, or they're doing some basic things, but like it is one of those concepts of like, okay, and we'll get to this more, like rather than trying to drive a Ferrari 200 miles an hour to start, the reality is I think most incidences they go overlooked for hundreds of days in most examples, before an attacker takes action or the incident gets discovered. And so, when you compare 24 hours to not doing anything at all, it might be the wrong expectation or bar to set a lot of times, for certain organizations too.
No, you're spot on. You are spot on, because what happens with trying to develop, in my experience, SOC capabilities, is you try to literally eat the entire elephant in one bite, and that sets you up for a complete and utter failure. You do not want to do that, because when you start asking questions, I've had conversations with a good number of our members in which we've talked about SOCs and like how they could work and how they could operate, and kind of really what the expectations are for you all, for our members when it comes to a SOC. And I have to laugh, because both the easiest and the hardest questions when it comes to SOC is the exact same thing. What do you want it to do? And I again laugh, because the very high level things like, well, it's easy. I just want to know the bad things that are happening in my organization, and then you let us know. How hard can that be? It's easy for us to determine when payroll doesn't run, and we can learn that way. How hard can it be to know when a hacker is in our organization? Just let us know that way. And if you're trying to eat that whole elephant in one bite, if you're trying to like go from not being a driver to giving that 16-year-old then a Ferrari and to drive 200 miles an hour, all of a sudden we have a lot of really difficult questions that we need to clarify and answer. In knowing exactly what's wrong in your environment, we need data, we need information. So what information do you have? What is within your capabilities? Are you able to see data from your servers or from your networks with NetFlow data? Do you have proper antivirus logs? Do you have IDP logs? Like there are, I could literally have an entire session, an hour simply on this. And then knowing that for many of your organizations, like, do you have 100% full control of every single computer at your organization? Do you even have the ability to get all that data and all those data feeds if you're lucky? Because if you're not, then that's going to make things even more difficult. There's network flows, there's user activity. You have to worry about both of those as well. And then even if I know now you get down to this point and you're probably thinking, oh, this is probably going to be really difficult. Well, now you have to start asking yourself some more questions. you're going to be getting all this data and all this information. What are the appropriate thresholds that you're concerned about? When it comes to like loss prevention at like retail stores, are stores going to worry about people taking 10-cent items or dollar items? Is that where they're really going to put their focus on? Or are they going to worry about people grabbing a laptop or grabbing a TV and walking out with it? Those are the kinds of thresholds that you need to think about and worry about for activity. So this list can keep on going on for a really, really long time, the things that you need to think about.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's an aspect of, for some organizations, I think it's just overwhelming to try and process, where do I even start? Is what I'd say, and starting to work towards that security operations function. Next slide. You're right there, Kevin?
Oh yeah, yep, I'm fine. So in thinking of like all of these questions, you start to realize that like traditional SOCs are going to require a lot of investment of time and resources if you want to be successful. This isn't something that is ever really taken lightly, because all these traditional SOC concepts require a lot of really important things. One of the things that I ended up learning early as I'm trying to like build a SOC and build SOC capabilities is that if you really want to be effective and not really be chasing your tail in everything that you're trying to do, the staff, the people that actually run all of this, they really need to be like experts in not only cybersecurity, but your entire processes, your infrastructure, really like what there is, everything that can happen at your organization, they kind of need to know about. And a lot of this really boils down to institutional knowledge. What your networks are, your subnets, your applications, your servers, exceptions, knowing what in your organization should be normal, in my experience, has typically taken 12 to 18 months for someone to really get familiar with. I've worked within SIM software, and it's I've had like new like SOC analysts and security analysts come in, and they've started to look at alerts that come up, and it could take them potentially a couple of days to investigate a particular alert. And I can look at it with my institutional knowledge and say, oh, it's that IP address, or it's that subnet, or it's that professor, it's that employee. And no, just in looking at the data, the context kind of behind something, and realize if it is a true security incident or if it's something that is probably okay, and just, I'll just call it just an annoyance, right? All this stuff takes time, and in my mind is one of the biggest problems in standing up your own SOC, is that if you don't have that deep knowledge of your organization and your SOC staff can't bring that to you, you're going to be spinning your wheels a lot trying to figure out what is a legitimate problem and what is not. And this is probably the biggest, if there's one takeaway that you can take away from here, it is that staffing matters when it comes to traditional SOCs. It absolutely does. If you think that you can just throw people or contractors at this and just say, hey, pretend that you know what's going on, and let us know what's going right and what's going wrong, it's not going to work well. And I think we saw this. We saw this with regards to Target when their large breach came out. They had, Target had they had a SOC. They had third-party services, and we know that there is a lack of visibility that Target had. They flat out admitted it in their report. We know that at least half of SOC functionality right now goes completely ignored and unused. And Target was one sad recipient of some of that 50% lost capability, but that is generally across the board. And even then, there was a third-party contractor in India. They noticed suspicious activity within Target's network, and they again alerted the United States-based SOC, and that was ignored. And the fact that alerts are being ignored is, again, then that's going to be my number 2 big thing for you to realize with SOCs, is there is alerts and alert fatigue, and I think we have 2 slides about this coming on in really short order. But when the time that it takes for even the alerts that are generated within a SOC to be looked at and addressed and figured out if they're legitimate or not, that can take a very long time. And I hate to say, like, take months to years for SOCs to get up to speed, but that's time that I'll be honest, we don't have. The attackers are going to be working a lot faster than months or years when they're trying to get in our systems. So to even say that, if you're assuming that a standard SOC can give you everything you need right here now, and you have millions of dollars to do it, that is not a guarantee. And I personally don't like putting that kind of investment into a potential service if there isn't even a guarantee that it's going to be roses and all good stuff coming out on the other side.
Yeah, and that's a tough reality. Is, I think it's not only for a organization like the size of Target, but really any size organization, right? Essentially faces, and the smaller you become, the less likely you're going to even be able to allocate the resources and get the focus that's needed to be successful. So you can go next slide. So now, separating the wheat from chaff, right? What do you actually do with all this noise, and how do you make sense of all of it?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, no matter what kind of monitoring program that you have, the whole concept when you have a SOC is that events come in. Events are coming in probably. I mean, when I was at Wayne State, I had probably about 13,000 events every single second that were coming in and being ingested, and that was honestly with me having a lot of things turned off. So the amount of data that comes into the SOC is huge, absolutely huge. And then your SOC software should try and make some sense of all those events. And there are rules that say, hey, if I see certain things, A and B and then C, but not D, and you can potentially tune what generates these things, comes up with an alert. And the whole idea then there is you figure out an alert comes on, there's a reason for it, you identify why that happened and figure out if this is legitimate or not legitimate. Now, these events, again, they can come in, several tens of thousands of events every single second. They can and should come from a variety of different places. Your firewalls are in my mind, one of the really, really big ones where these events should come from, especially if you have a next generation firewall that can tell you more about potential like IDS or IPS or network viruses or command and control traffic or reconnaissance or scanning. You get a lot of really good high fidelity information from your firewall threat logs. But additionally, you know that you have people connecting to your Wi-Fi systems, knowing when they come and when they go and what has tried to happen during that time is also very important. Knowing when people log in and log out of your systems is also very important. So your authentication systems should be sending events as well. This is important because if you're trying to identify who may have improperly accessed any of your critical systems, allows you to see the exact times in which the log in and log out happened, and you can really scope down the potential time frame in which a security incident has happened. Whenever you're investigating an alert, knowing the start and the end times that bad things could have happened will literally dictate everything that you do. So you have all this information. If you go back and, hey, if you have that EDR software, right, that software that can help you identify what may have happened on individual computers, helps because now you build a timeline. You build a timeline as you're viewing this alert to figure out what exactly has happened. You can see in the alerts, oh, I see an email was delivered, an email was clicked on, a process was then run on a computer. That computer then went and did some DNS resolution and looked up a couple of websites. One of those websites was then browsed at through the network firewall. The network firewall then blocked a download from happening. So by doing all this, you're then you're generating this timeline. You're determining, okay, the SOC software thinks something weird or bad may have happened, but did it actually happen, or did it let me know beforehand? If you go and look at the cyber kill chain, there's a long period of time in which bad things may have happened. As long as we block that attack from happening somewhere before the very end, we're good and we're okay. We just need to analyze this. But the problem with analyzing this is a lot of information, and this can be a complete and utter overload on either you or on the IT analysts or the SOC analysts that are kind of responsible for doing all of this. Next slide, please. Because I have tried to run, I say tried, I mean, I think I was relatively successful in running traditional SOC software, SIM software. I was utilizing IBM QRadar personally, and I was playing with some other systems as well. And out of the box, they'll come in and, I was getting several hundred alerts being generated every single day, and it's just completely unsustainable. I I'm a little bit of a Seinfeld fan, and Newman from Seinfeld, was a U.S. Postal Service worker, and I know during one of the episodes, just talking about I think Kramer didn't want mail anymore. And Newman's like, no, you can't do that. The mail, it always comes. It never stops. It just keeps coming and coming. And then there's Publishers Clearinghouse Day, and it just never ends. And that's what will happen with alerts and with events. There is no getting out of that. So in order to kind of get around this, you need to, going back to what we're talking about at the very beginning of all of this, is realize that you're not going to be eating the whole elephant in one bite. You are not going to be going up to that Ferrari at 200 miles an hour just to begin with. You will burn out literally within a matter of days of all of these alerts coming in telling you that the sky is falling, that you need to change something. What you will do is you will just say ignore on everything, or you will tune your SOC software to the point of it being completely irrelevant. And either of those two options are unacceptable. You have just wasted an entire opportunity. So as we look at ways in which you can be more manageable with all of this, one of the things that you can do in order to be successful is to make sure that your IT professionals, the people that are doing SOC responsibilities, can actually see progress of their work, and that they're not just showing up every single day, clicking buttons, responding to alerts, leaving at the end of the day, right? Who really wants to do that? Who wants to just go and just do mind-numbing drone work every single day? Especially because these are supposed to be people that are very, very intelligent and have not only advanced, cybersecurity training, but know your environment, hopefully like the back of their hand as well. You don't want to give them grunt work. You want to be able to see, progress as you identify risks and you close them out. Next slide, please. So just some final SOC notes from the trenches. Having a good monitoring program can be really, really difficult. And I know that we mentioned back when you're trying to identify what can work, what can't work. Just to be frank, if you don't have complete control of all the computers on your network, if you have a very decentralized IT department, this will be very, very difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. You can still be successful here if you can just simply say, hey, I hear that you all can run your own IT, but pretty please, I need you to run this one like EDR agent so that I can get some information from you. You can do that, things will start to be easy. But know that if you don't have visibility over your infrastructure, this is going to be very, very difficult for you. Additionally, making sure that you are ingesting all of your logs and that the data is applicable, the logs are accurate. I've had many times in which system upgrades have actually changed log formats, and as a result, data wasn't being ingested properly anymore. Like I lost Wi-Fi data because we upgraded our Wi-Fi system, and then all of a sudden things were logs no longer had spaces in them, but they had dashes in them, and that screwed everything up. Because running traditional SOC software really can be a full-time job. And that full-time job is needed because you need to monitor things, make sure that things don't change, you tune false alerts and things like that. I'm curious, Patrick, as you have went and looked at organizations and kind of looking at their existing like SIM and SOC software, have you seen things like that, like this yourselves? Like these are just
Oh
my
yeah.
my
No,
experiences from,
I mean,
I'm
the
not going
more,
to call it hell, but from doing this,
yeah.
and I'm curious, like what other things have you found as well with people trying to run their own SOC programs?
Well, I think first off, you're more sophisticated than a lot of organizations in having an understanding of this, so you have to keep that in mind. I think fundamentally, like what things do I actually log and what do I send them to is fundamental question that most people have, and even know where to start, right? Because you kind of mentioned a long list of all these different logs you could ingest. And then I think the other question is like, well, you can send a bunch of logs to a centralized place, but do they actually provide security value? And some of them might, but it might take a ton of work in order to actually get security value out of them. And a good example of that would be something like NetFlow, right? Not to get in the weeds, but I do think that, like, where do I start with log collection and detection is a very, very frequently asked question. Or where do I even start with security? Like, do I do the two-factor project, or do I do a detection and response project, or something else with security operations? Is a very, very common question. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is actually do nothing at all. Sorry, dude, that's not
Hey, I like
a
that.
good thing. That's not a good thing. But I think it goes to show, we were talking before the webinar earlier about like, well, hey, I'm always trying these new things. Well, that's my nature, is to try new things and fail. I think most people are afraid to make a decision and take that first step on any of the things. And so I think an important part of security practices is like just making incremental progress over time and learning from it and reiterating it, right? Which helps people get to where they need to go. So.
Great point. Thanks. Yeah, it's I know
As
that
fun.
SOCs are difficult. They're difficult to do well, and that's just this perspective I think is just really, really critical and important. Next slide, please.
Oh, there's upside. Sorry, I told everyone to do nothing, and the webinar attendance dropped by like 50%.
I know. Like, up until now, it's like SOCs are awesome. Doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, right? And it's like, well, yeah, there is an upside here, right? Like, the problem is effective monitoring, and while we all want to be perfect in what we do, we don't want perfect to be the enemy of good or good enough, right? Like we want to do something, and you're just joking that, hey, maybe doing nothing might be like better than doing something that's not worthwhile whatsoever. From your perspective, like what are those good ways in which you could start small when it comes to like monitoring and doing something small? Is it perfect? No, but like we want to start somewhere, right? Like where have you seen that good value when it comes to security monitoring?
Yeah, no, I agree, an incremental approach, right? Like, and I think like that's one thing where people are like, oh, I collected all my logs, what do I do now? And it's like, well, yeah, you might not have needed to collect all them. It's like, focus on a target area. Like a good example would be Active Directory. Like Active Directory are keys to the kingdom. Very logical first place to start, to say, hey, we should take a look at what's going on in here and see if anything is not normal, right? Well, what does not normal look like? So you kind of have to go down all these like long, windy roads. Like, not normal is a new domain account administrator being created, right? We might want to actually get visibility when that happens. And if it's happening frequently, then that's a bigger concern, right? And that relates to privileged access. So that's a good example of like something that happens late in an attack cycle, that I would say is critical to know, right? So you can take action before something happens. Or maybe it's, large outbound traffic, RDP or SSH servers connecting to your internal servers would be a good example of things that would be outside of what's normal or considered to be secure. And I think a lot of the challenge here is it's like, it's a full-time job just to deduct down to what things you should maybe be doing. And so I think a lot of people with other tools, and as we hop into Blumira and transition and discussing about that, they get into this activity of trying to figure out what they should detect, because it's a maze. And how do you make sure that you detect the right things, and not with too much volume, because those are really the challenges people have. So probably the biggest thing is looking for like very high risk and then persistence, something continually trying something, are the types of things that tend to result in success of finding a bad actor early on, is what I would equate it down to.
That's a really good point. There's a giant continuum of attackers out there with regards to their sophistication. They're either like really, really smart, like the people at three-letter governmental agencies, and then over on the other side of the attacker spectrum are the people who, to your point, don't know how to hack very well, don't know how to attack very well, so they will be trying over and over and over and over, right? And every single time that they try to attack your system or hack you, like they will, like that should generate some sort of log or an alert. And if you're seeing that, hey, like, why is someone continually trying to make a new user or make a domain administrator? Or if you have either your EDR solution or a more traditional antivirus platform, like why is this virus try to run like every 5 minutes over and over and over and over again? And so if you think a little bit like an attacker, and if you're like, well, if I wanted to run a virus, or if I wanted to run ransomware in my organization, like how potentially would that work? And just kind of thinking that through, and if you just pick out just 2, 3, 4 bullet points, and even though you can get really, really deep in the weeds, you can, like, for any one of these individual things, like go really deep to begin with, just say, hey, I just want to care if on my antivirus console it detected something bad happened and I need to follow up on it, or on my network firewall that it thinks that there's some outbound command and control traffic. Like those are really, really high value, high fidelity logs. And if you can just monitor those and not worry about everything else, that's a great way to get started. Start small. Next slide, please.
Who are you gonna call? Hey, I think it's funny that you have Ghostbusters here, as far as like getting access to someone or have some expertise. But I had a millennial moment earlier I have to just mention is, wait, what's the guy on Seinfeld, Newman?
Yeah.
I thought that guy was from Jurassic Park.
Oh, he was. Yeah, Wayne Knight.
No, I know, but I never put 2 and 2 together that that's the Seinfeld guy too. It kind of shows my age. So to me, that's the Jurassic Park guy. And I was trying to process. I'm like, at first, I'm like, why is Jurassic Park on here? And then I got it. I'm laughing. But yeah, I think in regards to, let's talk a little bit about expertise, right? And 24/7. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like, is 24/7 always needed? What kind of expertise do people need access to if they're not doing a SOC themselves? I think are some great questions for you.
Yeah, because again, I know, like I said this probably 7 times so far. It's okay to start small and not eat the whole elephant in one bite. If you do have an alert that comes in, you see a notice like, I saw that, like CryptoLocker attempted to run on this one computer. Now what do I do? I mean, you have to figure out, well, is this something that I can worry about tomorrow morning? Is this something that I need to worry about right now? Does this go to the help desk? Does this go to networking? Does this go to IT? If they're not there, who gets told about this? They're not necessarily difficult questions, but they are questions that you just are going to have to answer for yourself. And to your point with regards to expertise, like who you're going to call if you don't know what to do next. Do you have a partner even outside of your organization, or do you have a community of practice, or do you have other outside resources to help you, so that when you see this alert that says there's outbound command and control traffic coming from your domain controller, who is going to be by your side to help you make sure that this incident hopefully gets properly managed and gets concluded in some kind of a proper way. It's both your internal as well as your external resources that you need to have ready to go at a moment's notice.
I think a lot of people get caught up in this, to some extent. And it's like, yeah, it is about having a call tree of people to go to as well. And it might, sometimes that's a single resource like Blumira. Other times it might be, other types of resources that you can have, or internal resources, right? So yeah, this is great. Next slide, I think. Yeah, and so as we hop to like the security problems, the reality is like with rising ransomware attacks, and I hate FUD. Someone put a statistic up on LinkedIn that like there was an increase this past year of ransomware attacks by 55,000%, and it's like, okay, let's just be realistic. Yeah, there's an increase, but that's a little too much fear, uncertainty, and doubt for me. But the reality is most organizations struggle with responding quickly. In that, it takes them time to actually figure out something's wrong, or it gets overlooked, is too often the case. And I see that time and time again with like people having RDP or SSH exposed to the internet, right, is a great example. And you can see that all over the place via free tools. But also the combination of like, oh, this concept of SOC is just too expensive for an organization. And so I think these are all things that you've talked a little bit about, challenges from your experiences in building and operating SOCs, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So this is I like this because this is the perspective from both my side as well as your side. Like these are like, this is reality. This is what's happening right now.
You can always choose to do nothing.
Well, yeah, and if
you like that one?
nothing,
no, I laugh, and I'm kind of cynical in some regards, because like even the iPhone update that came out 2 days ago, right? People will still not install that, right? And it just introduces risk. And so it's like, yes, taking incremental steps to get to a better place from a security perspective. So we can go to the next slide with that. And so I think combination of working with higher education, municipalities, government, almost all of them have something, in regards to commonality, which is like limited teams and resources, from a spend and operational perspective and people perspective. And it's quite interesting, like on a city county side, like you might see 1 or 2 people operating all of IT. Maybe it's a handful of people, right, depending on the size of the organization, but they're responsible for things like police, the water department, traffic control. Like you can kind of go nonstop into all these different functions, treasury, right? And the reality is there just really isn't enough organizations to go around. But they are responsible for making sure that security is a thing. And then there's just not time to deal with complex tools that have traditionally been here, or the amount of noise that these products tend to kick off to take security that seriously, right? You can hop to the next slide. And so I think this is where it kind of, and Kevin, you can talk to this quite a bit, is Blumira takes a much different approach, right? When we're talking about Security Operations Center, which is automating a lot of the functions and helping organizations walk through. And I think like there's a big people element to this as well, is in that like helping organizations that work with us get the right things logging and get to success and get things adjusted accordingly. So essentially, as much can be automated as possible, and there's not that people aspect. And so curious to hear your take, Kevin, on like comparison of a traditional SOC build versus a tool like Blumira and a service like Blumira that can help organizations.
Yeah, so up until now, we know that we need to do like security monitoring, and that traditional security monitoring has a lot of baggage that comes along with it. And like I've tried for years to try and solve a lot of these problems. We know with SOC systems, they need to be monitored. They need to be we need to have quick, relatively quick response. We need to have like security expertise in-house, which I was lucky to have. But then again, I worked for a major university and within the state of Michigan. I know to your just recent point, many of your organizations may only have an IT department of like 2 people or 3 people. There is no way with a 2 or 3 person IT team that you can effectively have a traditional SOC. There is just literally not enough time in the day to perform either the monitoring or even the engineering behind all of this. But you still need to do security monitoring. You still want to make sure that your attackers aren't in your system. And even if you can't find them immediately, the first hour that they're in, like you want to find them either like that day or that week or that month, or I'll be honest, I'll be happy if you can even find them that season, right? Knowing that attackers are typically in organizations like half a year, 150 or 180 days before detection, right? Like that's the incredibly low bar that we are trying to break right now and raise that bar up. And better software and pre-written playbooks and automation is how eventually we're going to get out of this problem. IT and information systems are only growing in complexity, and the only way for to beat that is to have some kind of a software solution similar to or like Blumira that can help us out and automate these problems and get us out of this, because we are not going to be able to get through this manually. Trust me, like I've tried over the last 15 years, and it is extraordinarily difficult. If it's difficult for me, it's pretty much almost impossible for likely almost anyone else to do successfully and to guarantee that you're doing it the right way.
So simplify it down. And I think the resource aspect is like, even a lot of organizations I see take the approach of trying to build this out, and they might have 1 or 2 people that actually can do it really well. But the reality of people then going to higher paying jobs or other companies leaves that organization in a deficit where none of these things work. And they can't actually afford to backfill that person because it would take multiple people skill set wise, which is a kind of unfortunate reality in a lot of cases people end up. And so it's key, if you think about it, to get the right automation in place so that it doesn't require a team of expertise, a team of experts, sorry. Expertise, yeah, in order to be able to do this. We can go hop to the next slide. And that's, that's really what we've focused our efforts on, is like, how do you get really quick time to security? Our product deploys 5 times faster than anyone. I see us get a trial in the customer's hands in a matter of an hour or 2, and then get value out of it. And then we reiterate with them on, hey, what things can we adjust within your environment that will actually give better detection? Then, next thing from that is providing rapid response. And when I say that, it's not necessarily us about, taking action on behalf of them. In some cases, we help automate action, like a next-gen firewall, right, where we can block things on the firewall. But the more important thing is providing a playbook that's like basic IT skills understandable, so anyone can take action and respond, very, very fast. And then having a backstop of expertise available. So we have a security analyst team, right, that can actually help the organization, whether it's a customer or a managed service provider that works with us, right? We can support them in that respect. And really, I think it's like what we're focused on is helping provide that access of security operations or security success and expertise. So when you're successful, we're successful, right? Which I'd say, I want to say it results in no security incidences ever, right? But that's not the reality of the world. Is like there are going to be times that and possibilities that you might still experience a security incident, but you have a product that's looking for that, and you have a team of people you can access when it's needed. And that becomes more important than almost anything, because the worst place to be is on the backside of an incident and not know what to do, but not know who to talk to about it as well. If that's helpful. Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you want good security monitoring and making sure that you're properly responding to what the attackers are doing, because they're going to be in whether or they're going to be trying to do their bad things, whether you're looking for them or not. But ultimately, you want to find and adopt solutions that are going to be simple and straightforward and just allow you to be successful. And that will happen when you can deploy a solution within hours as opposed to months. That you can have automation that reaches back into your firewalls, your AV, your IDP, and just automates, the blocking and the removal of the bad thing from the organization, and then to have other experts somewhere in your back pocket to make sure that that everything is all on the up and up. You're spot on, and that's what's important.
Hey, and I'm curious from a Merit perspective, right? So, how do we enhance and from an automation perspective, what you're doing at Merit? Would love to hear a little bit about that, and we can click to the next slide now as well.
I do. Before I do that, you just want to just go over just what kind of information.
Good call. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's good. I missed my cue there. So yeah, I think combination of a few things, like what we do at Blumira is we ingest all these different logs, help in identifying real risks and threats. So providing security finding, right, of, hey, this is something meaningful that likely you want to go look at. We provide the analysis on what to do. And then you can kind of see the little blocks where you can actually interact with Blumira inline. And on the right, we have essentially a response playbook as far as, hey, go do these things to be able to respond. And that's what I mean by human readable, understandable, and someone can take action on. But also having that backstop of expertise in product in this case. We still do phone call and email and all that other fun stuff when needed. But being able to quickly interact directly with an analyst becomes particularly important here. You can click next slide. And well, I guess we can open up the Q&A. But a call to action is like, if you do want to try Blumira, you can get a free trial and try it out, deploying in hours. You can also email us, blumira.com/merit-webinar. But I think more importantly, Kevin, like we're going to talk a little bit about your experiences, right? And what functions from an automation perspective help Merit directly within your environment.
Yep. So what was really, really helpful for us, we're utilizing Blumira to do security monitoring for our entire network, and because of that, we're able to utilize our security staff really, really well. We had an incident a couple of weeks ago, just like for example, all of a sudden, thankfully it was not the middle of the night, but I got like an email in the middle of the day. Blumira detected that there was some improper root level activity on one of our servers over in our research department. And because of the automated rules and playbooks that were really all put in place, one of our engineers was able to actually look in, and from that, basically that single pane of glass dashboard that you saw, very simply see exactly all the context behind what was going on, the actual alert that was generated, the users, the processes, everything that was just really involved. And they were able to go through, and there was a little playbook actions right there that says, hey, like, was this legitimate? Was this not legitimate? And all this process that normally we would have to pre-build ourselves, that we'd have to pre-test ourselves, that we would have to pre-think of beforehand. It's already there. It's in place for us. And through a single one click, we're able to actually go then and then push brand new rules to our firewall to make sure that particular IP addresses couldn't attempt to get in anymore. And literally, like, in the matter of about 90 seconds, go from reading about something bad potentially happening to not only identifying it, but blocking it and preventing anything from getting even worse in the future. So with regards to like being able to like quickly respond, and then here's the deal, move on with the rest of our day is really where an advanced monitoring solution that includes expert help and automated playbooks and integration back in with the rest of our security appliances really comes into effect. So with whatever that you end up deciding to do with your security monitoring infrastructure, knowing that automation is really key to keeping your sanity and making it so that you don't end up having alert fatigue. I can tell you that when I'm using Blumira, my alerts are typically like one a week. I can definitely deal with one a week as opposed to approximately 150 a day. It's letting me know what's important so that I can get on, do the rest of my work. I'm not going to be drugged down into the drudgery of continually identifying security alerts and like tuning the underlying system. It's letting technology work for us. Thank heavens, we're finally here. We can finally do that, right? And when it comes to building a SOC and how to even have good security practices while being SOC-less, is really the key point there, is that let's let software and automation do that work for us in an effective manner. And if it's not doing that, then you're utilizing the wrong processes and software and systems, and it's time to look for something a little bit better.
Yep. No, I think it's key. I mean, our focus has been on automating as much as we can of the stack. That is what I'd consider to be like a lot of people want in traditional solutions look for, I want to build this myself and I want to customize the heck out of it. Unfortunately, for most organizations, that results in ineffectiveness or a lack of ever getting deployed because of the amount of time involved. So, really that's a key as far as service we provide at Blumira from a security perspective. And just quick call to action. I know we're at about time, but once again, the joy is we let people try the product for free. You can get a free trial at blumira.com/merit-webinar, and then or you can contact us, sales@blumira.com, if there's interest in that as well. So any last comments before we wrap up the webinar?
I think again, for me, security monitoring is always fun and interesting, and anytime that you can find a good solution that fixes that problem, you're definitely a good place. And I know our members have good partners in all of us to help make that happen.
Well, it's been great.
Okay, yeah, I think we're at time. So thank you both very much for today. So on behalf of Merit Network and Blumira, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, you will receive an email notification with a link to the recording and a few resources from Blumira within the next 2 days. So we're all set. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you both.